Hello everyone, Super Duper Boy here, and I'm going to be reviewing the 7th episode of Star Wars The Clone Wars Season 7. So, in this spoiler review, I'm going to be doing things a little bit differently, and start off with all the good stuff, and then talk about the things I didn't like before giving my final thoughts. So yeah, there was a lot I did like with this episode. Of course, this was very action-packed and had some great fight scenes. I really liked the part where Ahsoka beat up all the Pikes without a lightsaber or the Force. Trace and Rafa are good in this episode also. I think for the most part I like their characters, and they still have great chemistry with Ahsoka. And one of the best scenes in this episode was when they were talking about what happened with their parents. It kind of ties into past Clone Wars episodes with the Chasing Zero thing. I don't watch that story arc too often, so I don't remember if what they described actually happened or not. But still, it does have connections to the past, which is cool. Also, I think the Jedi they were talking about was Luminara. But what's really important about this scene is how it gives Ahsoka a perspective of the Jedi from someone who's not in the Order. I like how Star Wars is showing that the Jedi aren't all that good. It's something really interesting that wasn't explored all too much in the movies. It's also fun how Ahsoka uses the Force, but keeps it hidden to make Trace think she's better at shooting than she actually is. One unrelated thing I like is how they refer to people who live on the upper levels of Coruscant as topsiders. It's like Coruscant city slang, so I don't know, I kind of like that. But yeah, back to the important stuff of this episode. This had so much action in it, which is something this arc hasn't had much of until now. I'm pretty sure the part with the rainbow explosion was Rhydonium, which is something that was introduced in Season 6, so that's a good reference to that. It's also really cool to see more of the Pike's world. It's a modern world, but it has a very distinct style and color to it. Some more scenes I liked is when Trace and Rafa thought Ahsoka hadn't made it over the gap and fell, and how you can tell that Rafa really didn't care about that. And the Mandalorians are in this as well. I suppose that Episode 8 will tie into the Siege of Mandalore. Something I found really interesting is the ending of this episode though. I was expecting them to escape, and then in Episode 8, they're being chased through space and meet up with the Mandalorians. But I was surprised that it ended with them being back in the prison. So I assume in Episode 8 they'll be rescued by the Mandalorians. Also, this episode was kind of brutal. When that Pike got crushed by the elevator, it reminded me of when General Grievous raided Kenobi's ship and crushed the clone skull. It's a bit bizarre that Trace and Rafa almost have no reaction to that Pike's head getting squished. Wouldn't there be blood and guts everywhere? Anyways, I think I've covered all the good qualities of this episode, so now I'm going to talk about what I didn't like. First of all, this is just a tiny nitpick, but I liked how in Episode 6, the explanation for where Trace and Rafa's parents are was that they had a divorce. It was simple, and I like that they didn't go for the dead parents cliche. But in this episode, though I liked the scene of Rafa explaining what happened, I was a bit disappointed that they had the whole dead parents thing. It's probably the biggest cliche of all times in movies and shows. But still, I definitely liked that scene. The biggest problem with this episode was how kind of invincible the characters are. Trace and Rafa aren't soldiers or anything, but they just escape from the Pikes so many times and kill so many of them. The Pikes seriously have worse aim than stormtroopers. Sometimes the three of them are running in a straight line and they still can't hit anything. Nothing about the Pikes are really that intimidating, but after so many Pikes die, it's a bit weird that they still try and capture them. There's a lot of spice on Kessel, and the amount Trace and Rafa had really wasn't that much, so it doesn't make sense why they're so desperate to get it. Also, I assume that Trace and maybe Rafa haven't killed anyone before. The average citizen of the galaxy hasn't, so they really don't care about the fact that they are just killing them like crazy. Of course, it's pretty common in Star Wars for the characters to survive super easily and for the antagonists to have bad aim, but I wish they just tried to make it a little more believable. The villains are just not powerful at all. Now for my final thoughts. There was a lot of good action and character moments in this episode. It was very fun to watch and had some good setup for the Siege of Mandalore. The only downside is how the Pikes are so weak and the sisters are so good at killing people for some reason. So this episode gets a 7.5 out of 10. It was good and way more exciting than episode 5. It's just that the episode's threat could have been handled way better. Anyways, thank you all so much for watching this review. Tell me what you thought of episode 7 in the comments below, and I will see you all next time. Peace out.